The start of the movie introduces us to our main character, Lynn. We are led to believe she is one of the fit models, but she's actually the chubby woman who is the photographer. Looks like we already know what type of movie this is going to be. The next scene shows us the leading male character Han Bing, a music producer. While at the grocery store buying a ton of junk food, his co-worker calls him because there is business to be done. Han is not interested, thus this results in them losing their potential client. We also briefly see him on a boat, heading somewhere. At night, Lynn is reading a magazine fantasizing about a movie star and losing weight to be with this guy. Her friend staying over calls her out for being delulu. The friend points out that Han is already in her life, but Lynn insists she and him are just friends. But the way Lynn gets excited when she is reminded that Han is arriving that day shows otherwise. During a flashback, we see the young chunky Han being bullied by the other kids. Lynn comes to his rescue and helps him eat his meal. We also see her admiring him when he is masterfully playing the piano. Ever since then, they became inseparable best friends. Coincidentally, their weights switched while growing up. Back to the present, Han and Lynn start running together, but she can't keep up. Han tries to motivate her, but she ends up demanding a snack instead. Now we know who Han was buying junk food for. Later, they also go for a midnight binge-eating spree. I say they, but Lynn is the one gorging on everything she sees. They also go shopping, but as expected, Lynn encounters problems finding things that fit her. While heading back to Lynn's home, they encounter a fisherman who comments about how Lynn and Han have always been childhood sweethearts. Before parting ways, Han declares he will fulfill any wish Lynn has for her birthday. In jest, she responds by screaming she wants to date a super hot guy, knowing that her best friend isn't going to take her seriously. Or is he? In front of her house, Lynn spots an injured rabbit and decides to bring it inside, not knowing that it is a magical being. The next day, after finishing dressing the rabbit's wound, a large group of people appear in front of Lynn's home. They are the production crew of a movie star named Huang, and because of a typhoon, they have to use her home as a place to shoot. Lynn cannot believe a handsome star is in her home. She even daydreams about being in a relationship with him. After the shoot, the starstruck Lynn briefly interacts with Huang. However, her mood changes when she later eavesdrops on Huang's conversation with his manager. She hears that Huang thinks she has great potential, but she has to lose weight first. His statement lingers in her mind for quite a while. In the next scene, while Han is talking to a boy band criticizing their song, Lynn rushes into his office. She declares she wants to get thin, telling Han that it's the one wish she wants him to fulfill. Han, without hesitation, agrees to help her out. And so, the next scene shows a montage of the first few days of Lynn's fitness journey. Aside from the usual exercise and healthy diet, she also seems to be taking diet pills and wrapping herself in plastic for some reason. Unfortunately, her attempts are futile, as she still breaks the weighing scale when she checks her progress. Even when her friend gives her encouragement, Lynn refuses to listen to reason. After sulking for a bit in her room, the magical rabbit shows up again, beckoning her to open the front door. She follows the rabbit, and this leads her to what seems like a haunted house. Seconds after entering, she falls through the solid floor and is transported into a different dimension. She then meets a mysterious old man who resembles the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland. Based on the bandage on this man's hand, we can infer that this is the true identity of the magic rabbit. Lynn panics loudly, causing the man to cover his ears. A brief moment of chaos ensues. After she calms down, the man hands Lynn a potion called the Dream Fixer. This will allow her to change into any appearance she wants, but it comes with an unknown cost. She uses the potion by mixing it with water inside a dark room. After seeing how her photo transformed into her ideal self, she touches the water and slowly turns thin. The next morning, when she wakes up, she sees her new self in the mirror, unable to believe her transformation. While still processing what happened, Lynn gets a call from Huang's manager, asking her to pick up some photos. She tries making excuses, but it doesn't work, so she eventually gets dressed, particularly wearing the one she bought but couldn't fit into before. There's also a brief scene showing Han arguing with his co-workers because he is feeling uninspired lately. While Lynn is on her commute to the city, people barely recognize her. One of the ferrymen even compliments her beauty. This makes her smile since she never experienced getting compliments before. Once she finally arrives at where Huang is, she takes a moment to admire him. She then approaches his assistant, introducing herself as an intern. Her beauty captivates the movie star, causing him to strike up a conversation with her, asking her if they have met before. Before she can even answer, her body suddenly starts transforming back to her old self. She quickly rushes out of the area before anyone can see her true appearance. Then, once she's back home, she finds the dream fixer and uses it again. Later, Han shows up in front of Lin's house. However, she refuses to show herself. Since he knows where the emergency keys are, Han lets himself in the house and eventually sees Lin. She pretends to be someone else, but to her surprise, Han recognizes her despite her being thinner. He even accuses her of using substances. At one point, while inspecting her face, Han feels a little flustered, perhaps because he's not used to seeing his best friend in her glowed-up stage. Unlike in other similar films, Lin immediately reveals how she got skinny, showing the bottle to Han. Of course, he can't believe such a thing exists. Then, while Lin is getting a drink, she becomes fat again. This is when she realizes that the effect of the magic potion only lasts for 10 hours. During a brief moment in his office, Han is looking up at Huang and thinking about his best friend wanting to be in a relationship with this movie star. In the next scene, Lin talks to Han's co-worker who is a stylist. She pleads for him to do everything in his power to make her prettier, just so she can have a chance with Huang. Thus, we go through a long montage, showing Lin shopping for various clothes and getting her hair done. At the end of this sequence, she meets with Han again, wearing a pretty red dress. However, Han doesn't seem fazed by her transformation. Lin and the stylist also agree to change her name to Alice. However, to avoid confusion, we will still address her as Lin. The next scene takes place at a theater where Huang is filming a music video. He makes it difficult for the director because he ignores his dance partner, stating that he's not motivated while looking at her. This causes the woman to storm out. While everyone is silent, Lin walks in and is introduced as Alice, the intern. Everyone is stunned while observing her, including the arrogant Huang. He recognizes her from back when they met at the pool. When someone asks if she's Lin, she pretends to be a different person, a choice that Han is clearly disappointed by. All of a sudden, Huang suggests that Lin become the female lead instead of the actress who walked out earlier. Han and Huang's manager objects, but the pushover director agrees with the request. And so, the filming of the music video resumes, with Lin acting as Huang's partner. Meanwhile, Han is obviously feeling uneasy seeing his best friend with an arrogant guy. But as the producer, he has a job to do, and he has to hide his uneasiness. Still, he ends up making the shoot annoying for Huang, and Lin notices this. Next comes another montage, showing how Lin continues using the Dream Fixer while acting as the leading lady for Huang's music video shoots. At the same time, the underlying tension between Han and Huang becomes palpable. Han makes Huang's recording sessions a living hell. During one of the filming sessions, the stylist informs Han that a kissing scene has been added. Of course, this sends Han into panic mode. Later, when the awaited scene starts to happen, Han yells out "cut" for no reason. His jealousy has reached its peak. It looks like he's not the only one because Huang's assistant starts calling a private investigator to look into Lin. During the weekend, Huang and Lin go on a movie date. Surprisingly, Han is also there. It seems like it's a coincidence, but we know why he's there. Upon exiting the theater, two starstruck girls notice the group. Huang thinks he's been recognized, but the girls instead approach Han, asking for his autograph. The date continues, and Han sticks to them like glue, observing like a hawk. While heading to the next location, Lin's alarm rings, indicating that she has little time left before her transformation wears off. However, Huang is oblivious to the truth, so he insists they continue to hang out. He takes her to a rowdy crowd inside a club. While trying to socialize, Lin's transformation is slowly wearing off, starting with her hands. She immediately runs out, and Huang tries to follow her. She ends up trapped in a toilet stall, crying because she's back to her original self. Fortunately, Han, wearing a ridiculous fluffy costume, comes to the rescue. He gives her the costume so she can exit the establishment without being seen. Well, sort of. Han's plan works as intended, although not without having an awkward encounter with Huang outside the women's bathroom. At one point, the disguised Lin overhears Huang talking about how he hates fat people. This causes her to think deeply for a moment, perhaps realizing how Huang is actually a douchebag. While heading home, Lin receives an earful from Han. He points out how she's acting in ways she wouldn't have, just because of the Dream Fixer. She then points out how Han used to be fat as well, but now he's not, so he wouldn't be able to understand her. This leads to a short flashback, where the young Lin overhears Han saving face in front of his friends. Back then, Han denied ever being close to Lin, and didn't defend her when his friends called her a fat pig. Before parting ways, Han poses an important question. What if the Dream Fixer runs out? That night, Han monologues about his true feelings towards Lin, revealing that she has always been the girl he likes. Ah yes, the classic secretly in love with your bestie trope. Anyway, In the next scene, the filming of the music video finally concludes. However, Huang continues to hold Lin's hand. The movie star makes a confession out of the blue, but Lin's response is only silence. Meanwhile, the manager's investigation concludes. She discovers from her PI that Alice popped out of nowhere, but she seems to have a connection with Lin. Her secrets are slowly beginning to be unraveled. During a conversation between Han and the stylist, we get a glimpse of a flashback. Back then, Han overhears a conversation with Lin and her friends. She denies having any romantic interests in Han. This devastated him at that time. Looks like both of them overheard the same thing and failed to clarify their feelings with each other. Moving to the next scene, Lin and Han attend a dinner with the rest of the production crew. The manager insists that Lin sit next to her, wanting to talk to her. Meanwhile, in the men's bathroom, Han overhears Huang talking to his side piece. Han warns the arrogant bastard that if he doesn't come clean to Lin, he will break the news to her instead. Huang tries to make excuses, but this gets him nowhere, and they end up brawling. Meanwhile, back at the dinner table, Lin falls for the manager's sly trap. She calls her Lin instead of Alice. When she responds, the manager knows her suspicions are correct. She then warns Lin that she knows her secret. Before Lin can respond, chaos ensues as the two men continue their brawl in the dining area. Of course, the production crew tries to break up the fight, but they only stop when an old couple passes by. When they start fighting again, Lin screams at them to make them stop. On their way home, Han insists that he's not going to apologize because he knows Huang is just making a fool out of her. He points out how the actor will treat her differently if she returns to her original form, unlike him who was always good to her. She doesn't believe him, pointing out how he became more caring after her transformation. His response, instead of reassuring her, is to bombard her with lectures about how she should be working hard if she really wanted to be skinny, not using some magic potion. Of course, this makes her walk away in tears. A day later, Lin is having a fancy dinner date with Huang. He gives her an apology gift, which is a portrait of him. Talk about narcissism. Lin then asks Huang if he would treat her the same if she got fat. While he doesn't outright say he hates fat people, his refusal to acknowledge Lin will become fat might as well be the same thing. In fact, he comments on how Lin could still try and lose a kilo or two more. Later that night, Lin goes to the home of the magical man rabbit dude again. She demands that he give her a version of the dream fixer that permanently changes her. He shows her that he has a version of the potion with a permanent effect, but he doesn't immediately hand it to her. He talks about how people can be greedy and lose sight of what they already have. Before we can see if she took the vial, the scene changes to Han. He's struggling with writing his new song because he can't get Lin off his mind. Fortunately, he's eventually able to resume writing by using his memories with Lin as an inspiration. At one point, Lin finally uses the permanent dream fixer, but this comes at the cost of Han losing his memory of her. When Lin arrives at work the next day, everyone seems to be acting weird. Even Huang seems uneasy around her. During a press conference, Lin finds out why the actor seems to be avoiding her. It turns out he has signed a deal with another actress, implying that Lin is not the only girl he's been eyeing. Then, all of a sudden, reporters swarm Lin, asking her about her past. There are rumors circulating about her being fat before and how she underwent surgery to become slim. Furthermore, the reporters ask if Lin had an affair with Huang. Unable to answer the reporters, Lin decides to run away. She even gets assaulted by an angry fangirl. Fortunately, Han comes to the rescue and takes her away from the chaotic crowd. Later, while talking to Han, Lin discovers the harsh reality of her deal with the magic man. Han can no longer remember who she is. When she tries to show him pictures of him and her on her phone, she sees that her face has been blurred. It's as if her old self had never existed. No matter how much she cries and begs him to remember, it doesn't work. Right now, Han believes that he and Lin grew up together, but they eventually lost touch with each other. He is sure the person he is looking at is not her. The next sequence of scenes shows both main characters going about their days, both feeling that something, or rather someone, is missing. One day, Lin is visited by Huang, but his reason for going there is because he wants to purchase a song that Han wrote. He reveals that it's a song Han wrote for Lin, the girl he loves. Later that day, she rushes to Han's office but only sees the stylist. She asks to hear the song Han wrote, and he plays it for her. While we won't be able to hear it in this recap, the song plays in the background while Lin rushes to Han's home, desperately trying to find him. While searching, she eventually finds a picture of them on his desk. This is when she finally realizes her true feelings for him. Lin runs as fast as she can towards somewhere, while a series of flashbacks appears on the screen. These flashbacks highlight all of the times when Han showed how much he truly cared for Lin. Lynn finally arrives at the place where the magic old man lives. She wants to reverse her wish and turn things back to the way they were. However, the old man is no longer in a happy mood. Still, after hearing how regretful Lynn is, the magic man grants her one last chance at redemption. Returning to her old chubby self, Lynn rushes out of the house, ready to meet Han. She finds him in the field and they reunite. This time, he remembers her. However, their romantic moment is ruined by a series of unfortunate events, one of which involves Han falling into a hole. Fast forward to 5 years, and Han is the one who is fat again, while Lynn becomes skinny. It's a happy ever after, I guess.